goodwill beginner. All my good works are needles in hay, and I try to do right based on my own sight, just like a blind man who's standing in the way. And all that I've taken, it was sadly mistaken to bleed for my own, for my sake. Now everything I have was stolen or borrowed. All that I've taken is much more than I can take. I was a fool in the quickness of the sand, and I was a leper trying to save my own skin. But now I'm a man who knows where I stand on the rock of ages. That's where I stand. Lord, you bore my refuse, and you are my refuge. You gave up everything when you threw it all away. You gave me life new. You carried my weight through the evening to the morning and to the day. I was a fool in the quickness of the sand. I was a leper trying to save my own skin. But now I'm a man who knows where I stand on the rock of ages. Jesus, that's where I stand on the rock of ages. Jesus, that's where I stand.
Alrighty. Welcome to Calvary Chapel Greenville, Texas. Possibly one of the funniest places in Greenville. Is that right? No? Okay. When somebody gets the giggles, it's so easy to keep it going.
I have 3 daughters.
Yeah. It's just going to keep going, man. Just going to keep going. So, anyways, that's all right. We're going to do some jokes tonight. We're going to keep it rolling, keep it moving. She's going to not have to do sit-ups for about a week or two, right? All that laughing, ha ha ha, works your stomach. Anyways.
Oh, sit-ups. I think it's sit-ups.
No crunchies, no sit-ups. You'll be good. Alrighty, things that are going on. Women's ministry. That was yesterday, but we're going to do it again next Tuesday, so we're pretty excited about that. That is Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. here at the church. And so, do what? What?
It's going to be extremely cold next Tuesday.
Well, we'll figure something out. We talked about, like, if we were going to try to do the men's thing last week, we were, because of all the weather that came in.
Do it up there on the stage where the heater is, right?
I don't think the heater up here works. I have to go check it.
Well,
At least I haven't messed with it.
They say it's warmer up here.
Well, these lights aren't the high-powered lights. They're LED, so it doesn't get warm the same way. Sorry, our cheapness.
It's warmer up here than that table right there.
Okay. So, ladies, however you want to do it. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Wing it. Tuesday, 6 p.m., hinging on weather perhaps. First Wednesday coming up, that next one coming up is February 5th, and that'll be Don. He's going to be teaching on baptism. So we're excited for that. After that, well, actually, right now we're in the book of Ruth. We're in Ruth chapter 2 tonight. We won't be in Ruth for a super long time. There's only 4 chapters in the whole thing. Hopefully the pouring of water doesn't come through sound-wise. I was running late today. I apologize. Yeah, kind of. Was this funny? I think she's going to be non-functional the whole way through. That's okay. So for those of you in TV land, Ashley, I don't want to name names. Is that too much? Did I say too much? Okay. Anyways, it's just so funny. All right, men's prayer, that's every Friday at 6 a.m. It still won't be super frozen by... She laughs out loud, it kills me. So men's prayer every Friday at 6 a.m., so we'll be here for that. Shouldn't be bad weather this Friday at least. Maybe next Friday we'll have worse, I don't know. Men's breakfast. That will be coming up on January 25th, which will be not this Saturday, but the Saturday following. And no, we will not go to Garland for this time. All right. Fellowship meal coming up February 2nd. Theme, Italian food. And currently on Sunday mornings, we're taking the longest, deepest dive through the book of Jude. Hopefully you guys are appreciating that. Is it good? Are you breathing now? Are we good? Breathe. This says you breathe. Ha 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 ha. All righty. So there's all the things that are coming up. We're in the book of Ruth tonight. We're in chapter 2. We made it all. Actually, we didn't make it all the way to chapter 2, did we? No, we didn't. We made it almost to the end of chapter 1. So I wanted to read that last little part. Well, actually, let's remind of what's happened so far. Ruth takes place in the time of the judges. And the time of the judges is really earmarked by the fact that people kept just kind of declining down to their own mindset, doing what was right in their own eyes. There was no king in the land at that time, so they did what they wanted to do because, who's going to stop them? And so the Israelites went through this weird roller coaster for quite a while where things would go well, they'd start to decline, get worse. They'd cry out to God. God would send them a judge. And then some of the more famous judges like Samson, the big dude with the hair, right? Was that too much? Okay. So you had some of the more famous judges that were going through there. And so the time frame of this book is in that place right there, in the time of the judges. And so we do have some interesting things that happened last week to catch you guys up, those who weren't here, those who are trying to remember. It was that Ruth had married into a very sickly family. So that went very poorly for her. Her father-in-law died, then the husband and the brother-in-law died, so it got awkward. And now it's just her and Naomi. They're over in Moab, a place they shouldn't have been to begin with. It's Toilet Town. We remember that from last week, right? Who was not here last week? Just a couple of you, so that's okay. Go back and watch last week's. It's going to be easier than me reteaching last week and then teaching this week again. So, but anyway, so there they are. All these things are going on, all the problems, chaos, and so Naomi is ready to head back home. She's heading back to Bethlehem. And it's not been a good time. She's lost again her husband, her 2 sons. It's just been a really rough time. And so we catch back up to her, and actually we're going to end chapter 1. It's more or less punctuating what was last week. And I was looking at it thinking, well, I could really go in depth in some different parts here, but it's not going to be beneficial to the rest of the way, so we're just going to do it this way. So Ruth chapter 1, verse 19. I don't know if did I put that in there? I put that in there, okay. Ruth chapter 1, verse 19 through 22. We're basically just reading this to catch us up. So the 2 of them, that would be Naomi and Ruth, went on until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the woman said, "Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Do not call me Naomi. Call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. And so now they're in the springtime. And I say that because that's what the commentator guy wrote down and said, okay, because I don't know when barley harvest happens in Israel, so I'm just going to go with what that guy says. But they came back at just the right time. It's barley harvest time. And, it's interesting. When it's harvest time, that means you're getting the produce or the grains or the whatever it is in the field. You're getting them out. And you can bring them back, and of course you'd want to sell them or process or whatever you're going to do with those items. And so that's the time that they came back. And it's kind of a really, so let's just say that it's in God's timing the way this has happened. And you're going to see the hand of God moving in the life of Ruth in this chapter. Now, a lot of times, a lot of people would actually look at this book and they would say, well, this is kind of a beautiful love story. Okay, that's fine. It is a love story to some level. And the love interest in here would be Ruth, and of course the book's named for her. And then the other side of that would be a guy named Boaz. We're going to find and meet Boaz tonight. And you think, well, wait a second. You're giving the whole story away. That's right. We're not going to talk about in-depth stuff tonight. Just know that that's kind of looming on the horizon. That'll be that the theatrical irony. There you go. Or situational irony where we all know what's about to happen, right? And we know how it's going to lay out. But now we're going to watch that from even the perspective of knowing that it's going to happen and just keep our mouths shut and watch the people interact and do the things they're going to do. So now, chapter 2. The water is very cold. Thank you so much. It just works. Ruth chapter 2 and verse 1. And it says, "Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz." Now, Boaz is an interesting person. We know that. He's not really mentioned anywhere except for right here in the Bible. Other than the genealogies that you'll find in Luke and the genealogy you find in Matthew, so you'll see him mentioned there. But otherwise, you don't really see any other mention of Boaz. Now, we find out that he was the grandson of Rahab. So he comes from a sketchy past, right? But he's an upright guy, all the things that go with that. And there's one other place that I found in the Bible where you find the name Boaz, and they name 2 columns or pillars in the temple Boaz, and it's strength, right? So his name, by some speculation, let me say, is strength, or in the one guy. So I looked to try to find what was really the meaning of it, and people disagree, but I kind of, this is about the average of what they came out to be. It's likely in him, and that would be the bow, and then might, like power, and the OZ. So when we meet Boaz, which we'll meet him here in a minute, he'll just be this nice guy. He's a nice guy who happens to really believe in God. He's going to be a picture or a type of Christ as we go through this. He is, the Hebrew word for this is Goel, but that is the kinsman redeemer. He is the kinsman Goel. He is the kinsman redeemer. He is going to be the redeemer in the story. So you'll see that. And that's why a lot of people look at this like it's a love story. Let me throw this out there. This is a picture of Christ in the church. If you want to associate it with a fantasy story about romance and all that stuff, just remember that that's not what it's about. Make sense? So while that element is there, and for sure it's right there, and I think, being the marriage of husband and wife is a picture or type of Christ and the church, then we can say, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. And if you think about it, it's like, well, Jesus draws you in, right? He comes and he talks to people. And you say, well, no, I've never seen Jesus come talk to me. But you've heard somebody talk about Jesus before, right? At least this guy, if no one else. And so if I'm the only person who's ever talked to you about Jesus, which I would find quite shocking, but if that were the case, then know that God sent me to you to tell you about Jesus. Okay? If you've heard it from 500 other people before and you're now hearing it again, one more time, know that God sent me to tell you guys about Jesus. It's really that simple. And so God puts this effort and energy into reaching the lost, into reaching the people that could belong to him, that could be his people. And so God throws all the energy that goes into there, and it lines up with the kinsman. Now, as we get into chapter 3 is going to be deep, really cool. And that'll be next Wednesday when it's probably going to be freezing, right? You say it's going to be super cold? Bring your blankets. Bring space heaters, whatever we got to do. We'll figure it out. Maybe we'll come in here and turn the heaters on early or something like that. I don't know. But worst case, you watch online. But just show up. It's so easy. Anyways, but we're going to see a little bit deeper in all that part, and we're going to understand some of the structure of what's going on here. And so here we have Boaz, the kinsman or the near kinsman. And so he's more or less he's a special family person. So a kinsman is somebody who's related to you, right? So this is so easy. So I could you guys just take over, I'll be good. Let's go to verse 2. You ready? And Ruth, the Moabite, Toilet Town girl, said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him, in whose sight I shall find favor." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." Now, in verse 2, you don't really see a real clear path of what's happening here, but you see some understanding by Ruth that you're going, well, how does she know this stuff? So the how does she know stuff is because she wasn't necessarily raised in Bethlehem. She wasn't raised as a Jewish person in Israel. She was raised in Moab, and they have a different mindset to many things. You'll find that God has a heart of charity for people. And what you will be surprised by is it's not how we do it. If we switched our way of doing it to God's way, you would see things move in a very interesting manner. But so Naomi, and Ruth are very poor people. How do I know that? Women don't work. You know what I'm saying? They kind of do some stuff. There'll be some things they interact with. But as far as being like landowners and all that stuff, that's not happening. And so it was that the people should take care of the widows, that people should really take care of the orphans. And you'd almost think, well, both of these people kind of qualify that, except that Ruth was also a widow herself. So it's not exactly clean right there. But you see what's the setup of it is that they are people who are poor. They don't have anything. And we talk about, well, we're poor here. It's like, I only got 2 cell phones and a 4-wheel drive or whatever. It's like, that's different, man. We see wealth very differently than they did back then. When I tell you she's poor, it's like, if she didn't do something, she ain't eating, right? I mean, she's just super starving. And so God put provision in the Bible. God put provision in the law. He wrote it through the hand of Moses, and we find it in Leviticus 19. In Leviticus 19, verse 9 through 10 says, "When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your field right up to its edge. Neither shall you gather the gleanings after you harvest. And you shall not strip your vineyard bare, neither shall you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. I am the Lord your God." So who are you leaving this for? For the poor and the sojourner. And what are you doing exactly? You're not getting every ounce of food off of that field. We have compartmentalized things in the United States. You don't find many farms like between here and Dallas. Have you seen many farms there? Not many, right? Oh, there's a handful here and there, but definitely not ones that you're going to get grain harvest or anything like that off of. Well, there's some areas just kind of like around Blue Ridge where you might find corn and stuff like that. But overall, I mean, that's like dog food corn. It's not stuff nobody wants to eat, right? So you think, well, we couldn't do that here. That's true, we couldn't. It's a different setup. They were an agrarian society, right? They did agriculture, and that's kind of how they functioned. So inside of that whole thing of doing the agriculture and being in operation, it made sense for them to do it this way. So they would leave some behind. You get a good machine from John Deere or Massey Ferguson, whoever makes those massive, crop eating combines. You get it from them. They don't want you to leave a drop on the ground. Get everything you possibly can. But that wasn't God's economy. God's economy is you don't have money, you're poor, you're having problems. We're going to leave a little extra for you, and you got to go get it yourself. Now, for those of you who have experienced times of having to get, food welfare style or food stamps or something like that, you say, well, man, that sounds pretty rough. And it's not rough actually at all. So you can't work, you're too poor to do whatever like that, but you can go pick up some food. And you can go, well, here's some extra food left over. And you can kind of fill your bags and you can function and you can do that. And so there was no unemployment service. We in America now have unemployment stuff, right? So if you lose your job in a specific way, you can go there and you can say, give me money. And they're like, okay, cool. And you say, well, that's just from the government. Well, actually, the employer has to pay for that, strangely enough. And so it's just kind of a safety net that the Americans have built in so that if you lose your job, you're not going to go completely hungry. Well, God had a different way to do it. He says, you lost your job, we get it, but go out there and get you something. Go and physically grab out of it. Well, so what makes that more interesting is that probably wasn't the way things happened in Moab, but Ruth understood the dynamics of what had to be. And that's most likely, we don't know this for sure, but we would have to say most likely it was that her husband, perhaps her father-in-law, whoever she knew of the whole thing, she listened to them and they talked about things of Israel. Now, so this is back far enough that they don't have the rest of the Bible, so they have the words of Moses. And so they probably knew that. They probably understood the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. They had a good handle on that. And they probably talked about that at the dinner table, or they sat around and they just kind of discussed this. And so it's something that she knew. And she said, you know what? We may not have a lot, but you know what I can do? I can go get us some food. And you see kind of a working mindset in her that says, I can go out and I can do this. And then she, not only does she say, I can go out and do this, but then she even frames it out as to whose sight I shall find favor. So she was not going out there with this attitude. Does that make sense? We now call them Karens. I feel bad for every lady named Karen. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I've known some really nice ladies with the name Karen, and they've been fantastic. But somehow, I didn't say all of them. But somehow there became this big thing where it's like, oh, that's a Karen, and she's a whore. And I forget what the guy's name is. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Do what? Ivan. What? Kyle?
It's Karen and Kyle.
Okay. This is where you learn stuff right here. Right here is where you learn stuff. So, but she goes out there not as a Karen, but as a caring person. I didn't do that on purpose. It just worked out. So she did it with the right motivation, the right heart, and the right mindset. And when she goes out there, it's not like this, you're going to give me stuff. None of that at all. She goes up with the right heart, the right mindset, and she's really trying to do the right thing. And so this is like where you need it to be, right? So she's doing all the right things. She goes out with the right, and you'll see that as we go through here. Let's look at verse 3, because we're going to be forever if I keep doing this. Verse 3 says, so she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. And I would ask you this question, what are the odds, right? I don't believe that God forces you to do anything. Let me be very clear. I believe that we hear from God. God encourages, exhorts, pushes, and we have to make the decision to follow God. Now, she may not have realized that. She was probably walking around like, where am I going to do my stuff, And she's like, that one looks pretty good. What drew her attention to it? God. Well, that seems like I can do something there. And so God sees the heart of this young lady who is really trying to do the right thing, and he says, you know what? I want you to be right here, and there's a reason we're going to put you right there. And so she doesn't know any better. She just walks on, and she goes into this field. Turns out that's Boaz's place. Who's Boaz? Well, she'll find out. She doesn't know yet. But she goes there, and so everything is going well. She's out there working, doing her thing, gathering all the grain and the stuff that goes with that. And up comes the big guy, Mr. Boaz himself. Look with me at verse 4. It says, and behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered, the Lord bless you. Then Boaz said to his young man who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this? And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, she is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers. So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest. And you think, okay, so now we see the setup, right? Boaz comes back, and he's like, okay, who's this? We can try to infer some kind of ooh, who's that? But it's not there. So relax, ladies. I say that. He says, who's this young lady? Now, to be perfectly transparent and honest, he might look at her and say, good-looking young lady, He could say that. You don't know. But that's not what's in the text. He says, who is this lady? And then they begin to give them the testimony of her actions that day. But before they do that, I want you to see how they greeted each other. What did Boaz say? The Lord be with you. And their response was, the Lord bless you. What Lord are they talking about? That'd be Creator God, right? Pretty easy right there. And so you see, just by their greetings, they're believers. They're people who are trying to serve God. And there's a different mindset and a different attitude with those people who try to serve God. And if there's not, you got some questions. I'm just going to throw that out there. I hate to say this to you guys. I don't want to make you feel pressure. But if you tell people you're a Christian, you're a believer and all that stuff, it kind of changes the expectations that people will have of you. Some people will expect you to be the worst person alive because they've been burned by Christians before. They've been burned by somebody who claimed to be a believer. But then you'll see a lot of people say, well, aren't you supposed to be like Jesus? They'll kind of call you under the carpet. And so there's kind of a different expectation of that person. I shouldn't speak profanely. I shouldn't, hit people with a car. Pick up your things. I don't know. Think about things that would make you the wrong kind of attitude or the wrong person. And so, you can't then be a Karen. Let's go there again. You can't chew out the manager. I can't believe that. You can't do that stuff. Maybe you want to. I think it's so that people whip out their phones on you, YouTube stuff. They'll call you out for not being a Christian pretty easily, pretty quick. There's a different mindset that comes with being a believer. I was interested. There was this guy's become very famous recently, but this guy named Wes Huff had a loose debate with this guy. And throughout the entire thing, he was so cordial and nice and pleasant. The guy left the debate, informal as it was, early, angry as he could possibly be, and just couldn't stand to be there 1 second longer. And not once did this young man, and he is a young man compared to me, but not once, why am I getting old? Anyways, but this young man, not once did he say one vile thing. He said, well, now, what's your facts for that? And it's just so pleasant, so nice. But he had the right kind of a mindset, the right heart, the right tenor, and all that stuff for a believer. And so you kind of see that that's what we're supposed to be, right? That's the people. We should be nice. We should be loving. We shouldn't be talking trash. It's easy to talk trash, isn't it? It's so much easier than just being nice. So these people have that. Lord be with you. Lord bless you. But he goes to the young man in charge of the reapers. Who is this? Whose young woman is this? Now, the testimony that this guy gives is pretty remarkable. She is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. I want you to notice something interesting. There is a division, okay, a cultural division. You'll find that she's always referred to as the Moabitess or the Moabite woman. We remember that God's not very favorable towards Moab, and remember the lineage of Moab. And if you weren't here Wednesday, you ought to go back and understand that. It's a cool one. But so there is a division. You say, well, that would never happen in today's society. Yeah, actually it would. They say, well, if you don't divide over race, you divide over we'll find some way to, we hate people from Oklahoma. We're in Texas, right? So you get that. Like, well, can you tell the difference between people from Oklahoma and people from Texas? And that turns into jokes, I'm sorry. But you look around and there, people try to find a reason to divide over anything, Why is Texas so windy? Anyways, I can't go there. Oklahoma. Anyways, so there's always going to be some kind of division that we divide up over. She came from Moab. There was some opinion about the people of Moab. They're just like, oh, yeah, that's the Moabite girl that came back with Naomi. When she came to talk to them, though, she presented herself well. She says, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves and reapers. She was courteous. She was nice. She was respectful. She was all the things that you need to be. And please, let me come and do this. And then not only did she have that attitude when she came in, but her actions spoke the rest of it completely out. Because then she gets right to the task, and she stays with the task except for that short period of time where she took a rest. That was the only time. But otherwise, she was moving, hustling. She was trying to get all this stuff done. She's working. And what was the reason she was working? Because she's hungry, man. She's poor. She got nothing. There are these people, you've never seen them before. I'm going to tell you about something you've never heard of or seen before, right? You pull up to an intersection, you'll see this guy with a cardboard sign, and they're always begging for money. And I look at most of them because I've seen enough TV exposés where they follow them to their car, they drive away, and they go to their apartment and stuff because they've got, this is their income. That's how they make their money. But every now and then you find a legitimate poor person or somebody who legitimately is in that state and they need help and all that stuff. And for those people, you find compassion. And if you're my wife, then you move them into our house. But that's another story. That's not an advertisement for people to come over. I'm just saying. But we had a family one time. Some of you all remember that family that showed up. But you know what? They needed a place to stay. And I said, you got 2 months. And they ruined their welcome within a month. I promise you they did. But we feel compassion for people and we should help people, right? You should always be of that mindset of compassion to try to help someone. So when she came in, she's doing the right thing. She says, please. And when it comes time to work, she's laboring, she's pushing, she's doing all those things. And so there's no doubt that you say, look, this is somebody we're going to help out. But now Boaz is going to introduce himself to Ruth. It says here in verse 8, then Boaz said to Ruth, now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men to touch you? And when you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn. And so Boaz isn't giving her extra anything, okay? He's not giving something that he can't afford. He's saying, you're already in the process of doing this. I'm going to make your life better and easier by simply just letting you be here and really engaging in you being here. You will find people are more willing to have somebody come in and be there and work with them and all these things if they first start off with a real good willingness, right? It's like it's not even work to you. Like, well, these guys are just there, and yeah, it's costing. Man, it's not really costing me anything. Those people are working for it, and you kind of do this mental math where it says it's okay because they are invested. And when someone else is invested, man, it makes a difference to the world. I can promise you, it does. That goes for church here too. So like the people who are invested in this church, and when I say that, it's showing up. It's all the different things. It's throwing the money in the box. All that like. This is your family. This is your church family, right? And this is who we are. When we see that investment in people, we want to reinvest back into them, don't we? Why? Because they're part of the team now. They're part of the group. They're part of the family. And so when Boaz sees her heart the way she's doing, he says, like, no. You don't worry about going somewhere else. We got you taken care of. We're going to invest right back into you because we see your character. We see how it's going. And so absolutely he's going to do that. Now, there's a couple things that you see inside of this. So he frames it out with, you stay close to my young women. So there's young ladies who are in the field working also. Just stay close to them and be in that proximity. So I'm going to give you people that you're going to be around. We're going to start seeing a picture of the church, okay? I'm going to throw that out there. So she's got now people to be with, common gold kind of people. Hey, we're out here doing the same thing. She would also find protection. So he told the young men, don't touch her, right? So he's going to protect her. And then when you're thirsty, go get something to drink. Now, if you think about this, it's like, isn't that the very picture of God? Come under my wing, right? You see that in examples in the Old Testament. Jesus says, basically, take my yoke, I'll carry you. We are under, if you're a Christian, if you're a believer, you're under a protection from God. Now, that doesn't mean that, like, you can play with snakes. There's churches that do that. Go to one of those. Some guy in Kentucky is like a snake church guy. Dude's been bitten a number of times, and like they've got the anti-venom ready to go. I'm telling you right now, if you ever find yourself walking into a church and they're handling snakes, walk back out. Just get out of there. Those people are crazy. And I said that from the pulpit. They are crazy. I'm going to handle poisonous snakes. It's not like they get like farm-raised snakes. They go find them, man. I watched a documentary on this guy, and I'm like, this guy is going to die. How is he going to die? From being snake bit. Strange part was he's the second pastor of the church. His dad was the original pastor of the church. Anybody want to take a wild stab in the dark how his dad died? Snake bit. God's going to protect you, right? But you can't be stupid. Let me just throw it out there. God will protect you, but don't be stupid. So she's protected. And then refreshment. And doesn't Jesus say, I'm the water of life? Whoever has thirst? I mean, so just this is everything that is. So they're taken care of. They have people to be around. And I can say this confidently. If you find another church, not a snake charming church, but if you find a normal church, and Joe figured this out, I figured this out, as we travel around, I go to, like if I happen to be in some location, we go to Calvary Chapel. And we talk to the people, hang out, and they were like instant friends. We had an opportunity, I know a bunch of people as it turns out, but a good friend of mine, if you watch the stream, there's a song that plays in the beginning of that. That's a guy by the name of Patrick Steele. And he used to travel around doing music all the time, but COVID kind of stopped all that stuff, so now he's just working in Arkansas. I went to a church, so we were in California, one of the trips out there, one of the many trips out there that we made, and he says, go over to this place, this Poema Fellowship, and in Costa Mesa. He says, there's a guy by the name of Odin Fong. He's a pastor there. Real awesome guy. You'll love him. So we go out there, and I meet up with Odin Fong. We talk for like half of the night. Just super awesome guy. Instant friends. He's one of the old school Calvary Chapel guys. So he's been around since the very onset of it. So probably about a year or so later, we go back. And then, so that was a Wednesday night. We show up on a Sunday morning service, and we're like, wow, they got tons of people in there on that Sunday morning. And so walk up, his wife walks up to me, hey, how you doing? Where are you from? Texas. And she goes, do you know Patrick still? What? They remember Patrick. He's an interesting guy. You love him if you met him, but they remembered him. And so it was like instant connection, instant family, instant awesome, right? Oh, in Texas. And this time, the kids were smaller and all that stuff. And so we're just talking back and forth. And like, man, you guys are so... And it was just a difference of night and day because we came into a family that just really was like, hey, man, we love you. What's up? And they were offering donuts and stuff. So, I'm in, right? But just a real nice group of people. And I've been to many churches, and, like if I'm traveling or working out in different areas or something like that, and just pop in and it's instant fellowship. It's instant friendship, unless it's a snake charming church and I'm back out the door. See, I got my standards, okay? I'm just saying. Even the churches that are kind of sketchy and weird, and they don't teach the Bible correctly, you'll still find people who belong to Jesus in there, and you still have a connection. And then, of course, the other sides of that. So Boaz is now offering Ruth these things that you come, you just stay here with us, and this is how things are going to be. That's kind of cool. I like that. She's impressed and knocks her over, right? So it says in verse 10, and then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? But Boaz answered, all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother in your native land and came to a people you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Then she said, I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants. And so you see this really amazing exchange. She notices, I'm a Moabitess, right? She knows that. She's no, are you kidding? Why don't you like me? I'm cool like everybody else. No, she realizes there is a kind of a cultural thing that's a division, and Boaz didn't care. I think that should be one of the first things. There's division all around the world. When you go across somebody who's from another country, from a different culture and all that stuff, it shouldn't bother you that bad. There's going to be some cultural differences, don't get me wrong. And they're going to think you're crazy or weird or stupid or something, but it's not our place to treat them in that same way. He treats her with kindness. He treats her with compassion. Now, it's not just one-sided. It's almost transactional because he's watched her and he saw the character of Ruth. She's already changed. Her mind's already changed. You saw that back on the road, right? When she says, your people are my people, your God is my God. When she had that attitude, it's like, I think she belongs to Jesus right now. That's kind of a cool moment. So it's kind of transactional. They've seen her. They've seen what's going on. They've seen how she functions. And like, you know what? You're welcome here. And sometimes you may see somebody say, well, they don't really belong here, but we see what they're doing. Hey, they're with us. Again, there's some kind of a unity that's been built by that. But it's because of her kindness, because of who she is, because of how she is, because of her love for her mother-in-law and all that it's really kind of led the path for who she is or, the situation that she's in. And I like there that he really lays it out, the Lord repay you for what you've done. Man, do you want to hear that? Or do you afraid when you hear that? Just think about this. The Lord will repay you for what you've done, right? So there's some people that should scare the skin right off their body, okay? That should be a bad situation. But for her, and when he's saying this, it's absolutely compassion and compliment. The Lord bless you for the things you've done. What? For taking care of your mother-in-law and coming back here in a place that you don't belong, or that you weren't born from and all that stuff, but guess what? She's going to totally belong there. And, so I don't know how many people of you can experience this. Some of you obviously can. If you've ever gone to a foreign land and some people are really welcoming to you and some people are not, ooh, that gets awkward real quick. Like in Europe, some people like Americans, but they all don't. They'll make a division. I'm sitting there, so they had made this announcement: don't go to where we're not supposed to go to that time. Northern city, Berlin. Don't go to Berlin. They're having these skinhead things. I'm thinking, we're all military, man. We all skinheads, White guys with shaved heads. I mean, like, we should fit right in, but you don't. Because they noticed, hey, look, you look military, you don't look skinhead. And I don't know, I didn't go to the rallies because I was told not to, and it was pretty much guaranteed death if you did, so they didn't welcome us. They didn't like us. We were the Americans. Bummer. I've had some people that like, oh, I met this guy at a fest one time. He goes, oh, you're American. That's so good. I'm like, okay. My grandfather's from Texas. I'm like, ooh. World War II, I got you. All right. Things happen in war. I don't know what to tell you. So some people are happy to see you. Some people are not. But when you're not welcome, right? Can you feel it when you walk through the door and you're not welcome? 100%. But so when she comes, Boaz is like, no, you're so welcome here. We've seen what you've done. We've seen your heart. We've seen the goodness about you. Yeah, the Moabites, probably not real good people, but you're amazing, right? And so we infer that information that we see in here. But like I say, it's transactional. There's a caveat to it. And what we see in there, the transactional side of it is because she was already serving God. She's already put her trust in God, has she not? Your God is my God. That's a pretty bold statement. She left home, left all her family, left all those things. She left the things that she knew for the things she did not know. And she was probably in great standing in Moab, but she was dedicated to the mother-in-law. And there's no doubt, again, I say this because I believe this. I'm confident that the husband, the father-in-law, the mother, they're all talking stuff about Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. They're talking about the Pentateuch. This point, this has not yet been written. So Judges hasn't been written yet. That'll happen. So there's only 5 books that they can go by. And I'm sure she's heard all those. She was with people she didn't know. She had a humble side to herself. To be humble simply means to be honest about who you are. So if you're really good at something, but you're really bad at other things, if you'll simply admit what's true, even though it sounds odd, well, he says he's a really good basketball player. Well, probably he is, right? If he's a humble person, well, I'm really good at basketball, but I've got that ability. I'm not that guy, just so you know. I know you're thinking, but no. But, people recognize who they are for what they are, and they say, this is who I am. These are my shortfalls. This is a place where I don't add up. And she had that. Hey, of course, she just saw it because she was the outsider, and she knows she doesn't belong, but she's just been so blessed by this. But in that whole transactional thing, especially with Boaz, she's now found a place that she's not only accepted, but now protected. Going on to verse 14, it says, and at mealtime, Boaz said to her, come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine. So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain, and she ate until she was satisfied and had some left over. And when she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, saying, let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. And also pull out some from the bundles for her, and leave it for her to glean, and do not rebuke her. So not only do your normal job and let things be there so she can come after, but leave some extra for her. See, she's being taken care of. She's under that protective wing, the protective arm of God. She's being protected, not because she's, yelling at people and forcing the protection, but because she's simply serving. And he's like, you know what? I love the heart. Everything I see about her, she's solid people. Is there an interest physically? I can't say there's not. You say, well, he probably wouldn't help an ugly girl. That's probably true. I don't know. I'm just being, anyway, so. Had to get you laughing again. He cared, he saw, and she was that person. So he shows forth favor and kindness. And it works out because in verse 17 it says, so she gleaned in the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. Thank you so much. And she took it up and went into the city. Her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. She also brought out and gave her what food she had left over after being satisfied. And so it's like she doesn't have a small amount of food. She's got a chunk of food, right? She's done really well. Boaz is not going to go broke by losing a little bit of food. He's just not. They're losing a little bit of the barley. He's not going to be, I can't believe I lost it. He gave her extra, man. Like, she can have this, and it'll help her so much. So we see, not only did she work hard, but she got promoted, if you will, right? So she was doing the things she's supposed to be doing. Boaz was like, just give her more, man. Make it work out for her. Because it's not like he's not giving something to somebody who's just like, please help me. She's out there working and just plowing through and doing the right thing. And so he does help her. But she worked, and she worked, and she worked at that. It should be an example for us. You're the people who are here. You come here, once or twice a week, whatever it is that you come here. I'm not saying you got to work hard for Calvary Chapel Greenville, but you work diligently to God. Your verse a day to keep the devil away kind of stuff. Investing, growing, learning, just understanding what God's word says. As much as I hate to say this, I'm not a cheerleader, but I kind of am. Yay, go Jude. It's weird, but my job is to encourage you to continue on, to challenge me, to go check out what we're talking about, to dig deeper. There's so many more commentaries on this, and you can learn so many more things and just find out what's there. It's up to y'all. She paid very close attention. She was a part of every step of the way. She wasn't asking for help or handouts. She was asking for permission to do the thing. But again, she was a part of everything of it. She not only did she pick it up, she was participating with the threshing, the winnowing, and she even gained by it from the nourishment. So it wasn't just like some random happenstance thing. She's really part of the mix now. Now here's where the story gets more interesting. Verse number 19, and her mother-in-law said to her, where did you glean today? And where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you. So she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked, and said, the man's name with whom I worked today is Boaz. And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, may he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead. Naomi also said to her, the man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers. And Ruth the Moabite said, besides, he said to me, you shall keep close to my young men until they have finished all my harvest. And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that you go out with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted. So she kept close the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of barley and wheat harvest, and she lived with her mother-in-law. And so you see that Naomi kind of is like, hey, look, we've got the golden well, so to speak. We're not there yet. It's still brewing, right, guys? Naomi, of course, women are like this. Almost every woman I've ever seen is like, they start matchmaking their kids, right? It just happens. I don't know why that is. I don't find myself doing that so much. I'm more like, okay. But women are kind of that way. Now, let's be honest, Ruth is not her daughter, but it's her daughter-in-law, and somebody she's grown close to, and somebody she appreciates, and somebody she's invested in. And you remember last week when she was talking, like, there's no way I'm having more kids, and you wouldn't want to wait. That's creepy anyways. That's child abuse. And so, it got weird, right? So she says the one thing in here that should have piqued up everybody's ears, bloop, he's a redeemer. He's a kinsman. See, that's going to be important. I don't want to take you all the way into next week. We really don't have the time to do so anyways. But the Redeemer can redeem her. But there's some caveats in there. The Redeemer has to be a kinsman. It has to be somebody who's related. And without going there completely today, and this is where so I'm just going to pick on you for just a moment. And we're good with that? So back in those days, they all knew this. They understood this. And this happened with Judah and Tamar and all that stuff. But so the oldest son would find some lady, and the younger brothers are like, better make sure she ain't ugly, weird, or got problems, because they know if he dies, they got to pick up the slack, because now they become the redeemer to that young lady. And so you'd have, your brothers would be like, they'd be careful, be like, man, they'd be helping you pick out. You know what I'm saying? That's how it goes. They're involved, man. They got some skin in this game, believe it or not. And maybe they don't. Maybe it works out perfectly fine. You get good old age and everything's awesome. But in those cases, a situation when it doesn't, they're like, I don't think you should talk to her. She's kind of, she's got some problems, dude. We don't do that so much anymore because it's like, if that were to happen today. So let's move back into current times, right? So now you marry some young lady and they're like, we don't care. Not our problem. Let her psycho mess. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of where they would be today. And so there's a difference that you see. But back in those times, it was important because you knew you could end up with this girl. Of course, old sickly and pining, I guess who's going to keep the other one? And it's not going to work out. And it didn't work out because he was sickly and he died, and it worked out. But the Redeemer had to be a kinsman or a near kinsman. You just have the giggles tonight, don't you? Okay, it's fine. The Redeemer had to be a near kinsman. And to make this understandable, we see that begin to happen as we're looking at from the perspective of the church or Christianity, and you say, well, we see the same kind of a thing with Jesus. Somebody said something, somebody proclaimed the gospel, you heard it, you're like, okay, I like that, I can track with that, I'm with this God, I can do this. And then you find that you have fellowship with other believers. Then you find all these different things are happening. So you see all this begin to happen, see all this begin to work, and then now we're tracking along. So you can kind of see a mirror or type of Christ in the church, which I hate to say this to you guys. If you're in the church, if you're a believer, you're part of the bride, guys. Don't let that affect your ego. But you're a part of the bride of Christ. And that's just a setup in the nature of it. You're never the bridesmaid, you're always I'm sorry, that's wrong. Anyways. But that's the picture and type of. Now, the reason that I can say that so effectively, and we'll talk about this more in the next 2 weeks, when Jesus spoke to his disciples, when Jesus interacted with these people, he spoke of the relationship, and they could understand that. And that's how this becomes such a good, clear picture. we didn't understand that, or they didn't understand that at the time of the judges. They just thought, what a nice thing that Boaz did for Ruth, right? And this Ruth, she's an amazing girl. You'll find out she's probably pretty good looking too. You'll see that soon. Read ahead, find out, and then come back and we'll talk about it some more. That's fine too. I would encourage you guys to read all the time. But you see there's a desire from Boaz for Ruth, and there is a desire from Ruth to Boaz. And so it's not transactional, but it kind of is. Because you look at somebody like Ruth, and there's nothing she could do. Not for herself, not for her mother-in-law. She didn't have the means, the capability, or anything. But you'll see it begin to function. You'll see it begin to work. I find this interesting because the parallel are the fantasy books that we call romance and so on like that. And the hero of those books typically is some, super wealthy person or some leader of some sort. And so it's like, well, that's kind of, I guess it's been stolen from the Bible, which, shocker, right? Women want a husband, a man who has capability, power, all that stuff. That's a desirable feature, right? In that same thread, Christians want a God, or people want a God who is not a weakling, who's not just some slacker. And we make fun of, as we look at some parts of the Bible where they talk about these idols that were there. And you have to carve out God out of a tree trunk, plate him with gold, and when the bad things come, you got to pick up God and kind of get out of the place with him. He's kind of heavy, you know what I'm saying? Like, we don't got wheels, but we're going to tote God because we don't want him to get hurt. Who wants to serve a God that you got to get through the hard times? I want to serve a God that gets me through the hard times, because I can promise you, you guys may not experience this yet, but I can promise you you're going to have some hard times. You don't have them today, you'll have them tomorrow. You don't have them tomorrow, it'll be the next day. But times will come, and trials, and they'll hit you, and you don't want to be with a God that can't carry you through that stuff. Just the way it is. So, next week we'll continue this on, and it will become a whole lot more interesting. And you'll start to see some things, because as I've been, the study up for this has been just really blowing my brain as far as how so many pictures, so many types of that I missed the last time I taught through this. You guys, I think you'll love it. Let's pray and get out of here. Lord, we thank you this evening. Lord, we're thankful that you love us. We're thankful that you have made provision, that you've made a way, and Lord, that you've pointed it out to us so clearly and so well. We ask for your strength, Lord, for your mercy, and that we could make it through this. Lord, that we could be your people, doing your thing your way. Lord, you gave us the perfect Redeemer in Jesus. And Lord, we are so thankful for that. Help us today, Lord, as we go through this time, that we can show that honor and that glory, that we can be like Ruth, just absolutely serving right there for you, Lord. Give us that heart and that mindset. Lord, we do thank you, we love you, and praise you, and ask all that in Jesus' name. Amen.